السلام
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد. So inshallah, this morning we will have some thoughts about Ramadan and preparation for Ramadan. And some of these thoughts will be more faqeeh thoughts, and some of them will be more heartly thoughts, tazkiyah-related thoughts. So inshallah, just like an assortment of thoughts about Ramadan and how we should prepare for Ramadan. And certainly, fiqh-wise, since this is an issue that is a very recurrent issue, may not be the most appetizing issue to start with, because it's rather like a very recurrent issue, and sometimes a very frustrating issue for the community. That's the issue of moonsighting and when does Ramadan start to begin with. And the issue of moonsighting causes a lot of friction in the community and a lot of contention sometimes, which is unwarranted. Basically, we have to understand that this agreement is not usually an evil, or it's not usually a result of evil inclinations or evil intentions on the part of the different parties. This agreement is just a natural phenomenon. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had decreed that there would be this agreement. In fact, He said, وَلِذَلِكَ خَلَقَهُمْ وَلَا يَزَالُونَ مُخْتَلِفِينَ وَلِذَلِكَ خَلَقَهُمْ. And they will will not cease to disagree, and that is why He created them, to disagree so that He can test them and see who is closer to Him and who intends His face and who seeks the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we disagree, Allah said, وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَجَعَلَ النَّاسَ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. If your Lord had willed, He would have made the people one nation, meaning one nation agreeing on one opinion all the time. But then where would the test be? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَجَعَلْنَا بَعْضَكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ فِتْنَةً أَتَصْبِرُونَ وَكَانَ رَبُّكَ بَصِيرًا. We have made each and every one of you a fitna, a trial for one another. أَتَصْبِرُونَ, will you show perseverance? وَكَانَ رَبُّكَ بَصِيرًا. And your Lord is all-seer, so He's watching over you. So part of the necessary requirements of this test, which is to test people by one another, is that they will disagree, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test them, will test their conduct, will test their behavior when they disagree. Because would there be a test if we don't disagree? Will we be, a test for one another, a trial for one another? Will Allah, test us out by means of others? If we do not disagree, there will not be a test. If we all agree all the time, then there will not be a test. So this test of disagreement is a very beautiful test. If things were all clear-cut, left and right, or right and wrong, black and white, that is a crude test. But it is a test, Sometimes things are clear-cut, halal and haram, wajib, mustahab, and everybody agrees, and all the scholars agree, and we are still being tested by this. Why? Because some people still, commit the haram that is agreed upon by consensus, by ijma'. This is a haram. No scholar ever said it is halal. And people still fall into this haram, so they are being tested by this, and they fail the test. But this is not the finest test. This is not the most refined test. The most refined test of whether your heart is inclined to, please Allah, or inclined to please the ego or yourself and nafs, is when there is disagreement. That's like a finer test, because here, mentally, you could say to yourself, your mind could say to you, well, that's very nice. It's like a feast of opinions. So I can pick and choose. I can choose whichever one I like. And in this case, are you inclined to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is your main focus, your main objective, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or basically satisfying the self or satisfying the ego, fulfilling your desires and wants and cravings? This is clear that you're not really after the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you think that this is, basically a chance for you to pick whichever one you prefer, then you're not after the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing our conduct when we disagree. Allah is testing our conduct when we disagree. Will we be able to rise above, our, biases? Will we be able to rise above this condition almost comparable to solipsism? And I'll tell you what solipsism is. Basically, it's not only, like I said, this agreement does not only show where your heart is when it comes to, your main objectives and goals, and whether it is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or satisfaction of the nafs, but also it's a list of conduct, because when we disagree, some people decide to basically block out all of the other opinions, and they block out all of the other, viewpoints, and they only, hold on to theirs as if they are the only people that could think, and they are the only people that could, be guided to the truth by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the only people who are deserving of the truth that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this reminds you of a condition called solipsism. And solipsism is a very interesting condition. It's a very interesting philosophy. There is a Descartesian, the Descartesian philosophy is based on doubt, right? I doubt, therefore I am. That's Descartes. And an offshoot from the Descartesian philosophy is this philosophy of solipsism. Solipsism is where you think that you're the only one who exists. So I doubt, therefore I exist. But I don't know if you doubt. Then I don't know whether you exist. Do I know that you doubt? No. So, but you exist, right? I see you, and I hear you. So the people, the solipsists, they say that, this could be an illusion, because you do see things that do not exist, right? You see water in the desert when it doesn't exist, mirage. So this could be an illusion. And unless you know that, for certain that the person doubts, then you don't know that the person exists. So it ends up that, since I know that I doubt, I know that I exist. And since I don't know that you doubt, then you don't exist. And in this case, I'm the only one who exists. And sometimes we act like this, although we don't believe in this, but sometimes we act like this. Like I say, you feel like you're the only one who exists, or you're the only one who has a mind, a brain, who is capable of not doubting here, but rather thinking. And that's really bad, because the Prophet ﷺ taught us, the very opposite of this solipsism. You see, when Abu Hurairah came to the Prophet one day, and the Prophet ﷺ said to him, how did your comrade or companion did the past 3 nights? And Abu Hurairah, was surprised. The Prophet ﷺ was talking to him about an incident that no one knew about except Abu Hurairah. An incident where the shaitan, manifested to Abu Huraira in the form of a person who came to steal from Bayt al-Mal. And then, Abu Huraira caught him the first day, and the shaitan begged him to leave him, so he left him, caught him the second day, and begged him to leave him, and left him, and then caught him the third day, begged him to leave him, and Abu Huraira said, I won't leave you, but the shaitan promised that if he left him, he will teach him something that will be of benefit for him. And he taught him to recite Ayat al-Kursi before he goes to sleep, because it will be a source of protection for him from the shaitan and from harm. And then, Abu Huraira told the Prophet ﷺ, when the Prophet ﷺ brought the issue up, Abu Huraira had not told the Prophet ﷺ the issue, but when the Prophet ﷺ brought the issue up, the Prophet ﷺ said to him the famous statement, صَدَقَكَ وَهُوَ كَذُوبٌ. He told you the truth even though he's an insistent or a persistent liar. He's like a liar, but he told you the truth. This is a very powerful statement, because this teaches us that truly al-hikmah dallat al-mu'min, al-hikmah, which is wisdom, which is the truth, is the ultimate pursuit of the believer, is the ultimate pursuit of the believer. So you're looking for al-hikmah, and you may accept al-hikmah sometimes from the shaitan, but certainly here we had the Prophet ﷺ tell Abu Huraira that the shaitan told you the truth. So finally the verification of this information came from the Prophet ﷺ. But it is still powerful and beautiful that even the shaitan at that point did actually tell the truth. If you listen to the conversation between the shaitan and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are many truths in the conversation. The shaitan never swears by anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He swears by Allah, by the might of Allah, and so on. So that's right. فَبِعِزَّتِكَ لَنُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ, by your might. So that is the right way of making an oath. So even when the shaitan says something that is true, the Prophet ﷺ said, take it, accept it. But like I said again, the Prophet is the one who verified this for us. But that is the very opposite of solipsism. This is to be open-minded, and to be really looking for the truth. So when you block out the other positions, when you do not want to listen, when you hold on to your position and you want to hide and block out anything else or any other position from any other person, then that would not be appropriate. It's a manifestation of solipsism. So we said first that we want to correct our intention. When we encounter a disagreement, we want to really correct our intention and make sure that we're looking for the pleasure of Allah. We're not looking for the satisfaction of the nafs or the ego or the self. And second, we want to correct our conduct, address the disagreement in a way that is beautiful. Address the disagreement in a way that shows that we don't really think like solipsists, that we don't really think that we're the only one who are smart or deserving of guidance, and that we're open to listening to other people, particularly that we live in a society that is very, very diverse. We Muslims in America come from different places, different backgrounds, different ideological orientations. And unless we know how to manage the disagreement, we will not be able to really form a good society, a good community of believers. And we will continue to be very fractured and disjointed society unless we know how to manage our disagreements well. Now, management of disagreement is not basically suppression of disagreement. It's not, extinguishing all the disagreement, because it can do that. It's just how we manage the disagreement and how we approach the issue of disagreement. So when we say that we should stay open-minded, there are some just like red lines, some guidelines that we have to observe. Staying open-minded does not mean that you will be shopping for different positions and that we compromise the deen for the sake of unity, because we don't compromise the deen for the sake of unity, but there is so much room of flexibility that we could use for the sake of unity without compromising the deen. So much room for flexibility that we could use without compromising the deen. So where are the red lines? The red lines is that in order for us to follow any opinion, this opinion must have some backing in the Sharia, some justification, support, proof behind it. Hadh min al-nazar, which is some justification, substantiation in the Sharia. The scholars said, وَلَيْسَ كُلُّ خِلَافٍ جَاءَ مُعْتَبَرْ إِلَّا خِلَافٌ لَهُ حَظٌّ مِنَ النَّظَرِ. Not every disagreement is significant, except a disagreement that has some substantiation. So the scholars disagreed over the issue. Each group of the scholars had their own substantiation from the Quran and the Sunnah and the Qiyas and so on. A position that lacks substantiation in the Sharia, or that is proven by the text of revelation, to be incorrect, is a position that will not be entertained by us, and that we will not, accept for the sake of unity, because here we would be throwing out the deen so that we stay united. And throwing out the deen for the sake of unity is not acceptable, because what is unity about if it is not about, holding on to the deen? What is the common denominator between us if it is not the deen? And if we do not have respect for the tenets of the deen, then we lost the common denominator that keeps us together as Muslims, because we're not ethnically similar, or racially or linguistically. Even we belong to different socioeconomic strata. Everything is different about us. That's why we are an ummah, because an ummah is, a gathering, an assortment of different peoples combined by a transcendent denominator, a denominator that rises above the inferior denominators of race, sex, socioeconomic status, ethnic background. All of these are inferior denominators. It is not an ummah until you hold on to a higher denominator that transcends above all of this and can combine all those people into one nation, ummah. But the common denominator, like I said, is the deen. So in order for us to stay as an ummah, we will have to really protect that deen, because it is the source of our unity. So we can't sacrifice deen for the unity, because you'll end up having neither the deen nor the unity. The position has to have some substantiation. The position has to be a position of an imam mujtahid, because the ijtihad is not common property where everybody can have like a share. Ijtihad is a ranking in scholarship that belongs to certain people who have the tools to make ijtihad. And when I say this, I am honestly, and I know that this may be controversial, but I'm not honestly referring only to the four great imams. Because if we really say that ijtihad is limited to four people of this ummah, we are really constricting something that is much wider than this. And the four imams, although they are of the best, mujtahideen of our nation, but they have their own teachers, right? They would melt out of, embarrassment if you tell them in the presence of their teachers that you're the only mujtahideen, when they have their own teachers that they used to value, that they used to consider to be greater than them, and then their teachers have teachers, and their teachers have the Sahaba as teachers, and so on. So we're not limiting this, but we're saying the position has to be upheld by an imam who is a mujtahid, and has to have some substantiation in Sharia, and should not be completely abandoned by the ummah. Because some positions, although they have been upheld by a mujtahid imam, and they do have some substantiation in Sharia, are completely abandoned by the ummah, and therefore those positions should not be a matter of discussion anymore. So we're not going to reopen the subject of temporary marriage or zawaj al-mut'ah, because Abdullah ibn Abbas, allowed it one time, at one point. That will be basically just a playful approach, like a mischievous approach to the issue of disagreement. That is basically following your own desires. Because our ummah, and I'm talking about Ahl Sunnah here, and Wal Jama'ah in particular, our ummah agreed upon shunning this position. Although it existed at one point, it has some substantiation in Sharia, because at one point Zawaj al-Mut'ah was permissible. And it is upheld by a great imam, one of the greatest imams of all times, Habr al-Ummah, Abdullah ibn Abbas. But yet the Ummah shunned it. Therefore, this practical agreement of the Ummah to shun or abandon this position is an indication that this position is too weak to be considered. So we will not go there. So now we have three conditions. And the fourth condition, you could say that the fourth condition is that this position is not in conflict with نص محكم صريح أو إجماع واضح صحيح أو أوائل الحس وبدائع العقل. Okay, those are four things, and this is like a collection from the statements of al-Ghazali, al-Sarakhsi, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Hazm. It's like an assortment of their statements. You could combine them into those four things that you should never oppose as a Muslim. Nas muhkam sarih. It's a clear, perspicuous text. Muhkam meaning unabrogated. It's a text that is clear and unabrogated, final, definitive text. That when we say text, what do we mean? Nas. It has to be either Quran or Sunnah, because there is no Nas except the Quran and the Sunnah. The statements of the scholars are not nusus. So Nas muhkam sarih, which is a clear, unabrogated statement. Ijma' wadah sahih, which is also, clear, manifest, ijma' consensus, that is sahih, that is authentic. This ijma' has been reported by a verifying scholar, because a lot of claims of ijma' are not true ijma', but it is reported authentically, correctly by a verifying scholar. You should not oppose that. أوائل الحس وبدائع العقل. أوائل الحس, which are the senses. The senses, your eyesight, your hearing. We should not oppose that. So we should not uphold a position that is in conflict with what we can actually see or witness by our senses. وبدائع العقل, these are called the mental axioms or mental maxims. Mental axioms or mental maxims is when you say the whole is bigger than the part is smaller than the whole. The part of a thing is smaller than the whole, and the whole of it is bigger than the part. These are called the mental axioms. Sane people should not disagree over those mental axioms. So those are four things that you should never oppose as a Muslim, that you should never, be found in conflict with them. النص المحكم الصريح، الإجماع الواضح الصحيح، نص الإجماع، الحس, the senses, وبدأها العقل. These are the mental axioms. Basically, there is a huge difference between mental axioms or mental maxims and, your logic and my logic. You don't say, oh, this is my logic, because we're not talking about logic. We're talking about the mental axioms upon which sane people must agree. The mental axioms upon which sane people must agree, not your, reasoning. It is the common reasoning of sane people. So, and then some of the scholars would add one other opinion, that if it is an opinion of a very small minority of scholars, you don't act upon it unless there is a need to do that. حاجة إليه. If there is حاجة إلى هذا الرأي, or there is a need to for this position. Now, let's say that the four imams agreed on one position, but then there is a need for a position, from al-Layth ibn Sa'd, or al-Awza'i, or Sufyan al-Thawri, or Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib. A position of a great imam has some substantiation, but it is a position that is, a position of a small minority of scholars. But is there like a need for this position? Does it, satisfy all of the other conditions in the first place? Has some substantiation, upheld by a great imam, not in conflict with the things that we mentioned, has not been shunned or abandoned by the Ummah completely. If it meets all of the criteria before, but it is still a position of a very small minority of scholars in opposition to the vast majority of scholars, then we don't really seek those positions out. We don't look for those positions and seek them out unless there is a particular need of the Ummah. And those who are particularly involved in fiqh, particularly fiqh of transactions and fiqh of finance and things of that nature, will find that all of the scholars, regardless of their background, regardless of their madhab, ideological orientation, and so on and so forth, will actually rely on those positions sometimes when there is like a pressing need to accept one of them. Otherwise, Islamic finance will never be able to adapt to the system, which it needs to. It needs to work within the system. Therefore, it needs to be flexible enough to work within the system, to have a place within the system. So these basically are, the criteria by which we go. If the position does not meet those criteria, then it is a position that we should disregard, that we should not seek out for the sake of unity, because here we would be going too far off into esoteric positions that have no backing and no substantiation of Sharia, or that have been shunned by the Ummah, practically shunned by the Ummah. So now, after we clear our hearts from our own biases, and after we open our minds to other positions that meet the criteria that the scholars laid down for acceptable positions,